You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast, brought to you by MartinClinic.com. During the episode, the doctors share a lot of information. As awesome as the info may be, it is not intended to diagnose, cure, treat, or prevent any disease. It's strictly for informational purposes.
Well, hello, I'm Dr. Martin Sr., and once again, flying solo today as we do episode 208. This particular podcast might be, well, we might even do two because there's so much information I want to share with you today, and that is about your gut. Now, do you ever get tired of hearing? It seems that the Martin Clinic, we're always talking about your gut and the importance of it. But, you know, I don't want to boast. I really don't. But I want to tell you, I've been talking about the gut for so long. I almost feel like Hippocrates, you know. I am not quite that old, a couple of thousand years old, but he said that all diseases start in the gut. And you know what? The more we study the gut, the more we study that this microbiome, the bacterial in your gut, man, oh man, it's just unbelievable. The stuff that comes out, it seems that every day, I'm reading a new study about the bacteria and about the lining of your gut. And I want to just re-emphasize that in this podcast and maybe even going into another one. I'll see where I get with this one. But there's two things about the gut, okay? Let's split them up, but they're very, very intertwined. But let's just talk about that. There's the microbiome. That is your 3 pounds on average, 100 trillion bacteria. Wow. Unbelievable. And guess what? If you don't think there's a God, I don't know. I just can't get over it. Like these bacteria, they have their own DNA. You got your own bacteria. I have my own bacteria. Like we have our own, like our bacteria have a personality. Like it's unbelievable. And it's sort of like an ecosystem inside your body, and it's very fragile, as we'll talk about as we go through this podcast today. But you got 3 pounds, so when you step on a scale, just say to anybody that's, if they're watching, or say it to yourself. We have a scale at the office, so when patients jump on the scale, I always say, well, take 3 pounds off for your bacteria. It makes them feel better right away. So, yeah, you got 3 pounds of bacteria, good, bad, and ugly, okay? And they have their own DNA, and as long as you have enough good ones, it really just is. It'll keep you very, very healthy. It's unbelievable, and we'll discuss that in this podcast today. So you have your microbiome, and then you have your intestinal barrier. It's a lining of the gut. It's a very, very thin microscopic lining called your epithelial cells, and it's very important. It is very, like I said, microscopic. It's the barrier between your gut and your blood. So when we talk about leaky gut, we're literally talking about your gatekeepers, the border guards. You know, I've used that a lot. They're border guards. You ever go, well, Canadians, I'm going to head down to Florida for a bit and have a little holiday in November. And, you know, one of the biggest thing for us Canadians to go into the United States is we got to go through customs, right? And I guess you Americans have to come through customs the other way. But I just find the American guys and women, they're miserable all the time. Hey, I'm coming to give you money. Now, I can understand. They don't want any bad guys coming in. I can understand that. They don't want any terrorists or whatever. So your border guards, you're at the border, are your security. And guess what? You need gatekeepers between your gut and your blood. And when you don't have enough gatekeepers, we call that leaky gut, because the intestinal wall is now being compromised, and you can have bad bacteria, viruses, I call them terrorists, and especially yeast. This is the most insidious terrorist that you can get is yeast that comes into your bloodstream. I remember doctors, and even every once in a while I still hear it, from my medical friends. They can handle when you hear, if one of my patients, for example, goes sees their doctor, well, Dr. Martin says I got yeast in my blood. And they're thinking like they're still back in the 1960s and 70s. And, if you get a yeast infection in your blood, it'll kill you. So that's impossible. No, it's very possible. And as a matter of fact, it's just because, and again, I don't want to be negative, but a lot of doctors just never see yeast. Unless it bites them coming from the skin, they don't really see it too much. If you got a toe fungus, they take that seriously, don't they? They'll give you medications for a toe fungus, literally, very, very powerful antifungal medication. Why are they worried about a toe fungus? Because it doesn't look good on your toe? Or are they worried about it coming into your bloodstream? Yeah, I think it's the latter. Anyways, I don't want to get bogged down with that, but let's just talk about some lifestyle factors that can affect your microbiome and the lining of your gut. They're very, very similar, by the way. I don't separate them too much because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Like if you take care of your things that we'll talk about here, that you will affect both the lining of your gut and the microbiome, those trillions of bacteria that you have within your body. So let's do everything about the gut. Let's talk about some lifestyle factors that can really, really affect you. Number one. Food. Okay? So you want to be careful with the new smoking. I've been very consistent about this, always talking about if you do nothing else for your body and just cut back on your sugars, okay? Good and bad and ugly sugars. Like cut back on sugars because sugars feed your bad bacteria. Sugars feed yeast. Okay, so remember, there's a war going on in your gut between good, bad bacteria. If you don't have enough good ones and your microbiome is compromised, and we'll tell you why it can be compromised. One of them is sugars. It literally feeds the third army that loves to invade and get across the gut-blood barrier, and that is fungus, okay? So you won't hear this much because a lot of doctors never talk about it, but I'm telling you it is very, very important. So cut back on your sugars. If you do nothing else and read your labels, cut back on your sugars, you will make a huge difference in your gut health, okay? What's another one? Industrial seed oils, okay? It started, folks, with Crisco. Okay, you guys might not remember this, but I do as a kid. Mama used to use Crisco, okay? And Crisco was something that, was hydrogenated. It came from seed oils. I believe in those days it was cottonseed oil. Very industrialized, very inexpensive, and it, we started using it in the 1950s, probably the late 40s, as a cooking oil. Like we replaced butter with Crisco, we replaced good butter and natural foods with something that was very synthetic and certainly wasn't good for you. And now today, almost every processed food that you can think of, soybean, it comes from soybean oil or canola oil. And, it's funny, we're shipping canola oil over to China. We're going to kill them if we you want to destroy the population of China, give them canola oil. And, I don't blame the farmers for growing it. They're getting paid to grow canola oil, and there's a big demand, but it's certainly not good for you, okay? Rapeseed, which is a rapeseed oil, by the way. Canola oil is made from that corn oil, soybean, safflower. These are all seeds that promote big-time gut inflammation, creates free radical oxidation within the gut. destroys your friendly bacteria and causes leaky gut because it affects the lining of the wall. The other one, gluten, and I often say gluten schmooten because gluten is not the primary thing that affects the gut, although it's gotten a lot of bad ink today. But I'm a big guy on lowering insulin because insulin through sugars and your, just a bad diet of consuming way too many processed foods and carbohydrates. I believe that creates more inflammation and the autoimmune response within the gut. But gluten can, for certain people, certainly with celiac, and today we do see gluten, and especially with people with thyroid, with Hashimoto's, they do well when they avoid gluten. But the way I get them to do it is it's not so much gluten. I just get them to go very, very low carbohydrate. Like quit eating, like I get a lot of patients saying, Dr. Martin, I like rye bread. Like light rye is very low carb. It's only got about 12 grams of carbs and no sugars added. Well, I said, look, if you don't have any trouble with gluten, and you'll know it, listen to your body. You got a lot of inflammation, just get rid of all rye and wheat and barley, and don't have any breads, don't have any noodles, don't have any of that stuff, and see how you feel. Okay, so it could be gluten, although, like I said, I'm more thinking about carbohydrates in general. But hey, you figure it out. Be your own doctor when it comes to your gut in a lot of ways, because listen to it. It'll talk to you. If you got an angry gut, you got a problem there. Okay? And, this is why I really try and emphasize the importance of the gut. So some of the lifestyle factors, sugars, industrial seeds, perhaps gluten, food additives, like artificial sweeteners. And for a lot of people, that really affects their gut big time. And not only does it affect, elevate insulin, but, a lot of foods, like a lot of processed foods especially, have a lot of food additives, okay? So if you can't pronounce the names, you probably got food additives that are added to the food. But if you stick pretty well, to the produce side of the grocery store, you'll do a lot better. You know me, I'm big on eggs, meat, and cheese. And some people say, well, okay, doc, I can't have eggs. They bother me. They bother my gut. Okay, well, then don't have them. If it bothers you, you got to be your own doctor and just say, no, you know what? I don't do well with that. And I love cheese, and cheese is so good for you, and cheese is it's got no carbohydrates. So you know me, I talk about eggs, meat, and cheese all the time. So the other thing that can affect your gut are infections like H. pylori and SIBO. H. pylori, most people have H. pylori, and the reason it's present is because we don't have enough acidity in our stomachs. So you know what? If you don't have enough acidity in your stomach, then these bacteria can come orally, can come from foods, and can come from all sorts of ways into your digestive tract. But your furnace there, your stomach needs to be a furnace. Very, very, very acidic. You need that acid. A lot of people, oh, doc, I got acid. Well, if you got acid, it's usually because you don't have enough acidity in your stomach, and your body's trying to produce more of it. So let's really look at gut infections that come in. Here's a new one on the block, a new kid on the block. I call it SIBO. And SIBO is a bacterial, let me say what medicine says it is. It's a bacterial infection of your small intestine. Well, I beg to disagree a little bit. I do agree that there's a bacteria there. There's no doubt that there's bacteria, but in Dr. Martin's opinion, it is a fungal infection, primarily in the small intestine. Well, the small intestine isn't that small, but it's very wide, and it is there this is where the primary absorption of your food takes place after it goes through your stomach. All your nutrients are picked up in the small intestine, and if you have an infection in there like SIBO, and one of the signs of SIBO, or at least some of the signs, are you got belching, your gas, and food seems to get stuck. It doesn't want to go down. Have you ever had that? I ask my patients, well, what bothers you? Well, when I eat, if I don't eat, it don't bother me. I say, well, you probably have SIBO, and one of the common causes of that is, well, it's fungus so it's leaky gut, but also can be caused by low acidity in the stomach. And this is why I love digestive enzymes. And this is why I really, really tell people, look, like take a little balsamic vinegar or apple cider vinegar. It helps to increase the acidity in your stomach so you can kill H. pylori and the fungus that's in SIBO in the small intestine. So another factor is stress. What does stress do inside the gut? Well, think about it. Okay? Stress, you're uptight and, look, everybody has stress, but sometimes when stress, high levels of cortisol, especially the stress hormone, goes on for a period of time, this affects your intestinal permeability. It actually affects the little mucosal wall, that very thin layer of endothelial cells that are there. They get affected by stress. And then you get extra bacteria that adheres to the wall, and it creates inflammation. It allows what we call LPS, which is a lipopolysaccharide. Lipopolysaccharide, by the way, is just it's an inflammatory component of bacteria. It's a byproduct. And that's all right. I mean, your body, as long as you don't get too much of it, but if you have a lot of stress, this can cause systemic, because what happens is that these LPSs, they go across your gut and they get into the lining, they get into your blood, therefore causing an inflammatory response. Your inflammation levels go up, and this can be a major, major factor. What else can affect you? Well, sleep can affect you. This is sort of a byproduct of cortisol. If you don't sleep properly, your cortisol goes up. If your cortisol goes up, you don't sleep properly. It's a vicious cycle. It affects your circadian rhythm. Your body works on a circadian rhythm. And you know what? They're finding now that if you you miss 2 days, and I really am sensitive to sleep myself. Like I am, I always tell my patients, I mean it. I thank God I'm very, very, so far 67 years old and very healthy. Well, I am, and but I'm, if I miss a night's sleep or a couple of nights or whatever, I don't get the amount of sleep that I need. I'm telling you, it has a major effect on me. But here's what science shows that it really has an effect on your gut. It changes the microbiome within 2 days. Yeah, that ecosystem within your gut gets affected. It alters it already within a couple of days. And what are they saying now? Somewhere around 70% of the population. No wonder people get gut inflammation and then systemic inflammation coming from that. Another factor, of course, and look, this is probably a major, major factor, is that the use of medications, especially antibiotics. Listen, you know me, I talk about the importance of antibiotics. Look, you got an infection, you're in the hospital or whatever, you go to emergency, you need an antibiotic. Come on, it's going to save your life, man. But the problem becomes when, especially in children, this is a big, big issue. Children taking antibiotics for ear infections, which are usually viral, by the way, and I don't blame you, mommy. Baby screaming. I mean, you will do anything for that child, like ear infections and a severe strep or whatever. Come on, I understand that. Most of them are viral, by the way, but doesn't matter. I mean, the doctors, to me, are, they're quick to pull the trigger and give you an antibiotic, and they know full well that it's viral. Instead of, maybe just giving you an antihistamine to get the inflammation down in the ears and in the sinuses or throat or whatever, and giving you some painkillers temporarily, give you an antibiotic. Well, what does that do? That disrupts the microbiome. And I'm telling you, it is incredible. This will come back to haunt your child. As the child grows up, well, first of all, one of the biggest things that antibiotics do, there's a huge link to asthma. Huge link to asthma. Huge link to food intolerances, allergies. Huge link to later cancers and whatever. I'm telling you, it's incredible. I just see it so much in my office because I'm a history guy. I'm a history taker with my patients. If they have a certain condition, I go, let's go back. Let's go backwards. Let's reverse engineer. And even when they're filling out forms in my office, they are telling me, did you have antibiotics as a kid? 1 5-day antibiotic can strip away trillions of bacteria in 5 days. And so you need to replace that bacteria. But I'm just telling you, these are factors of having digestive issues later on. I'm telling you, it disrupts your gut, can give you leaky gut, give you IBS, give you inflammatory bowel disease, can give you Crohn's later on, ulcerative colitis. I'm telling you, there's usually a major link to antibiotics. So the greatest discovery of the 19th century and the 20th century, and has become the curse of the 21st. It really has. And I'm not against them. So don't come to me afterwards and say, Dr. Martin's against antibiotics. I'm not. I'm against the overuse of antibiotics, and I'm against the fact that medicine, when they give you an antibiotic, should give you a probiotic with it. I mean, they should. Absolutely. So that you have less disruption of your bacteria. Here's another one, and it's very common today, much more common today than I used to see. C-sections, okay? And I talked about that. If you go back to an earlier episode, wasn't very long ago, I talked about autism and some of the new studies that were coming out on autism. And some of if you just look at the history of autism, it's a very new phenomenon, really. I mean, it is like an epidemic today. And one of the factors, I always talk about leaky gut, leaky brain. I have no doubt in my mind that ADD and ADHD and these things are more common today because of leaky gut. And what does C-section do? It does affect the infant's gut. And, you don't get the bacteria from mommy that you need because the baby is not going down that birth canal. And look at, C-sections, again, have saved many women's lives, and they've saved babies' lives. I understand that, okay? I'm just telling you giving you the facts, okay, that C-sections today can and often do make the child much more susceptible to gut problems later on in life, okay? And even formula-fed babies, okay? Just sticking with babies for a minute. Do you know that your lactobacillus and your bacteria like bifidus are, they're on mommy's breast. Baby gets that. And, I mean, not only are they getting their colostrum and their lactoferrin, which is a tremendous immune builder and feeds your friendly bacteria, even within the baby. See, they get that lactoferrin, and that is a tremendous, like a prebiotic that feeds those bacteria, and it is so incredible what it does, okay? So these are factors for sure, okay, in terms of your gut health. So thanks for listening today, and we really appreciate it. If you have any feedback, please go to martinclinic.com, send us an email at info@martinclinic.com, or if you have not joined our Martin Clinic Facebook group, a tremendous group. I just love reading some of I just love our patients because they know so much. It's incredible how they get it. And they're so proactive in terms of their health. So if you haven't joined that, then please feel free to join our Martin Clinic Facebook group. And we sure love it. Okay, have a great day.
You've reached the end of another Doctor is In podcast with your hosts, Dr. Martin Jr. and Sr. Be sure to catch our next episode, and thanks for listening.